Yeah.
Where's Natalie?
Okay, let's call the meeting to order. This is the first item of business will be a roll call, and then we'll do the remote meeting determination. So I'll ask our board secretary to take roll.
English. Director English is absent. Director Fardanish.
Here.
Giardini.
Here.
Logan.
Here.
And Peterson.
Here.
Okay. And the first item of business, and this is the Templeton Community Service District's special meeting for Tuesday, June 21st, 2022. Our first item of business is remote meeting determination, and the board will consider approving resolution number 10-2022, making findings to permit the continuation of remote board meetings in compliance with AB 361. Do I have a motion to continue with remote meetings?
So moved.
Seconded.
I'm sorry.
Seconded.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Director Peterson, seconded by Director Giardini. Can we have a roll call, please?
Directors Peterson.
Yes.
Giardini.
Yes.
English. Director English is absent. Fardanish.
Yes.
And Logan.
Aye. Okay, that motion passes 4-0 with one absent. And we'll now adjourn, since we have no members of the public in the room or on the call, we'll go ahead and adjourn to a closed session. Good evening. Today is Tuesday, June 21st, 2022, and this is the meeting of the Templeton Community Service District's Board of Directors. And with that, I'd like to have our board secretary take roll.
Directors English. Director English is absent. Director Fardanish.
Here.
Giardini.
Here.
Logan.
Here.
And Peterson.
Here.
Okay, and with that, if you will please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And prior to this meeting, the board did meet in closed session and no reportable action was taken at that time. So with that, we'll move to the order of business this evening. And would any board member like to change the items that are on our agenda? Okay, Director Giardini? Okay, with that, we'll move to public comments. And this is where members of the public may address the board on any items of business within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board, but not on tonight's agenda. In compliance with the Brown Act, the board cannot discuss or act on items not on tonight's agenda. However, board members or district staff members may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed by the public. On their own, and additionally, on their own initiative or in response to questions posed by the public, a board member or staff member may ask questions for clarification. The board may also request staff to report back to the body at a subsequent meeting concerning any matter or to take action or to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. And with that, I'll open it up to our member of the public that we have here in the room. If you would like to address the board this evening on items not on the agenda, you may do so now. Okay, so seeing the gentleman in the room is not wishing to make comments at this time, we'll move to the consent agenda. And these are items that are considered routine and non-controversial. The first item is the minutes, and this is for the board to consider adoption of the regular meeting minutes of June 7th, 2022. And also consider adoption of the special meeting minutes of June 7th, 2022. And we also have the treasurer's report. And looking for approval on the treasurer's report for April of 2022. Would any members of the board wish to pull any of those items or have questions? Okay.
No.
Okay, with that, I'll open it up to members of our public. If you have comments or questions regarding the consent agenda, you may ask those questions. Okay, so seeing none, I'll make a motion that the board approves the consent agenda items A, B, and C.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Director Logan and seconded by Director Peterson. May we have a roll call, please?
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
English, Director English is absent, Bardonish,
Aye.
and Giardini.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes for approving the consent agendas, items A, B, and C, and one absent. So with that, we'll move to our public hearing. And the first item is resolution number 11-2022, the refuge rate adjustment. And the board is going to hold a public hearing in compliance with Prop 218. And if deemed appropriate, adopt resolution number 11-2022, increasing the refuge collection charges for residential and commercial customers due to tipping increases. And with the implementation and operational costs related to SB 1383. But before I open up the public hearing, I'd like for a general manager to provide some background information. Because I think it's important for people to understand what's driving some of these increases.
Yeah, thank you very much. So tonight before the board is the consideration of refuse rate adjustments. These have been under study now for many months. They relate really to two items, both of which were anticipated when the district's agreement with Mid-State Solid Waste was first implemented. The agreement anticipates that the board would consider adjustments if the tipping fee of the landfill were to increase, as well as if there is new legislative items or requirements that come into effect. I've got just a very short presentation to walk you through these calculations. I will note that the Parks, Recreation, and Refuse Committee reviewed preliminary figures related to this in late March, and these figures were then finalized, and ultimately the district issued a Prop 218 public hearing notice in early May, asking residents or property owners or ratepayers to attend this meeting or provide written protests by today's date. So just real quick, this relates again to tipping fees and SB 1383. So the tipping fee matter is fairly straightforward and something that your board has dealt with before. When tipping fees increase, Mid-State Solid Waste can come to the district and ask for an adjustment, and provided we follow Prop 218, the board has historically approved those rate adjustments. So in 2012, when the restated franchise agreement was put in place, the tipping fee of the Chicago Green landfill was $41 per ton. It has increased, generally about once a year by $1 or $2. And in 2019, the rate was $50 a ton. And that in 2019, in May of 2019, the board approved a rate increase to accommodate or to account for that tipping fee increase. And then in 2020, the tipping fee went up again. But at that time, Mid-State Solid Waste said, let's hold off and not request it at this time. COVID had just hit. We weren't sure what the impacts of all that were gonna be, and it would only got up $1. But since then, it's gone up $2 more. And so as of January 1st, 2022, it's now $53 a ton. This is the compacted solid waste tipping fee. And so using the rate formula that we've used in the past, this fee would impact customers, any customer category where solid waste or the black can refuse that goes to the Chicago Green landfill would go up by about just under 1%, 0.99%. So of the items that you're gonna look at today, this is about 1% of the total increase, and it relates to the tipping fees at the Chicago Green landfill. That's relatively straightforward and something that you've dealt with before. There are some everything else is okay. There are all the other items deal with components of 1383. This was something that we've been working on for some time. The first component that I wanted to just quickly address is the IWMA fees. Up until now, actually through June 30th, the IWMA fee is 2% on gross receipts by hauler. This is a fee that IWMA imposes on Mid-State Solid Waste. It's 2% on gross receipts by hauler, except for residential accounts under $50, in which case it's a fixed 30 cents. And that has been the structure for many years. Effective over the last fall and over the course of the winter, the IWMA studied their fee structure, accounting for the county leaving the IWMA and accounting for the new requirements of SB 1383. The IWMA in early March, I believe, finally approved a new rate structure that takes effect July 1st. It eliminates that sort of discount for small residential customers and establishes a flat fee of 5.4% on the hauler's gross receipts. So that's implemented as of July 1st. That is a new, that's a cost component. Various entities are dealing with this a little bit differently. Some are not factored into their Prop 218 rates because it's essentially a pass-through. They can add it to the cost of the established rate. In our case, I've included the IWMA fee every time we've done a Prop 218 adjustment so that the notice rates are what the customer pays, what the customer's billed for Mid-State.
So for the benefit of the gentleman, member of our public, can you explain what the IWMA, what their role is and who they are?
Sure, but Ron Kroll is actually from Mid-State Solid Waste and
Oh, okay,
Recycling. So
never mind.
I know a little.
Never mind.
he's
can-
probably
he
been
I'm
can tell
preaching
us.
to the choir.
Yes, ma'am.
So, the San Luis Obispo Integrated Waste Management Authority is a JPA, was originally established by the county and the cities, and then as special districts acquired Solid Waste Authority over time, we became a member of this JPA. Now, as you know, it's gone through some restructuring here recently, but they handle the regulatory compliance with Cal Recycle, the reporting, the public education, and they're picking up some new responsibilities with SB 1383 because this is a fairly significant shift in the way we manage and report on solid waste. There are some new requirements of IWMA, and then we'll get into the requirements of the hauler, and the district actually inherits a number of new items as well with regard to enforcement and those kinds of things. So nonetheless, this makes up, actually, this is the biggest for residential accounts. This change of the IWMA is the biggest single increase. This adds about $2.42 for 65-gallon container customers. It adds $1.63 to 32-gallon customers. Those are ones that received previously only paid 30 cents. So makes up a significant component of the increase is related to the IWMA fee, which you really have no control over, right? If it's already established, it's coming. There's no way to avoid it if we're a member of IWMA. So commercial accounts, it varies because there's a huge difference in what the commercial accounts get charged based on their frequency of service and size of bin service. Now we get into some costs that Mid-State experiences directly or expects to experience directly, and we've broken these down based on their function. This first table deals with the capital cost. Mid-State purchased some tablet computers to go inside the trucks, software to interface with those tablet computers, and cameras. And so what they proposed to do was to take those costs, amortize them over 3 to 4 years, and then determine the annual expenses related to the capital improvements. And then those were then spread out amongst all of the different kinds of customers. And as you can see on this chart right here, this is the impact to the different various kinds of customers of this capital cost. So for residential customers, it's like 21 cents a month. I mean, every penny counts, but it's not a very significant portion of this makeup. And for commercial customers, it really varies from about 7 cents, up to about 35 cents. It's based on the number of visits per week per customer. So for a residential customer, you get 3 visits a week, right? You get a green waste visit, a black can visit, and a blue can visit. And so that's how these costs were spread, because each time that truck comes by, there's now going to be an interface with this equipment. The next cost that Midstate is directly dealing with is the labor component of operating this new equipment. This is really the additional driver time spent logging collect pickups and noting compliance issues. And again, these are logged in, will be logged in on the tablet computer in the truck. There's a connection between that computer and a camera. So if there's a photograph that is taken as the load is dumped, like and it shows that there's non-compliance, that gets entered into the system. So these additional costs add, as you can see here, for customers that get 3 visits a week, about $1.45, and then then it's 48 cents per, essentially 48 cents per visit. So each time the truck and driver show up. That's the cost of the additional driver time, because this is then there are some new some new administrative expenses. So this is non-driver time. This is at the headquarters site. Some monthly reporting that's required, and an estimate of logging customer service calls. SB 1383 requires Midstate to track every single type of call and determine if it's a 1383 compliance call, question about how to recycle a component. So those items all have to be logged, and this is the Midstate's estimate of their costs. About 20 hours a month spent logging these calls, and then about $900 a month in developing reports that get submitted to Cal Recycle and into IWA, and in some cases to the district. So it's about $1,500 a month. That gets spread equally across all the customers. Under this scenario, about 2,831 customers, so it's about 50. Well, it isn't about, it's 53 cents a customer per month. Then there's a couple of other charges. One that are new. One that's a pretty complicated. I didn't put it on the slideshow. Is organic collection for commercial establishments by cart, and that's which we've proposed to establish fees based on the estimated weight of that cart pickup. And then this one here, which more customers might be concerned about. This is the notice charge. This is if a customer is found to be in violation or a instance of non-compliance, and Midstate, the driver has to write up a ticket and leave it on the customer. This could be for something like a customer having a item in their can that the driver sees and ultimately does not then pick up. You could provide a notice that is logged. The time it takes to create that notice and log the information in the computer makes up this cost. Or if the driver actually dumps a can, let's say they were dumping a green waste container, or we're gonna have to get used to calling them organics, and out comes a bag of trash. And it was, you couldn't see it until it came out. That would be a notice. That would be a violation, and a notice should be created so that we begin that education process. So this is not a fine or a penalty. This is really just the cost of documenting that work and issuing that information to the customer. So those are all the new types of costs that Midstate is likely going to face. And so our refuse notice, our rate notice to customers, which is as part of your packet, and you probably received it directly as well back in early May. It basically looks a little bit like these 2 pages, and these are the current billed rates that are in effect today. This is after the CPI increase that took effect in April, and the proposed rates. So most residential customers are on these first 2 line items, either the 32 gallon, that's the smallest service available, or a 65 gallon cart. So those are going to go from about $33.45 to $37.60. And then the 65 gallon cart from $47.95 to $53.05. Now the commercial services, again, it varies a little bit. It's not a fixed percentage increase because of the way that the costs were broken down. And then there are, again, a couple of items that are new, that did services that didn't exist. The first one being these 65 gallon organic waste collection carts. Now, we established years ago, about 5 years ago, organics recycling bin rates. And those were shown right here. So these have been available for some time, these bin rates. But at the time, only businesses that generated quite a bit of garbage had to implement organic waste. And so most commercial businesses, even small restaurants, weren't required to. And some that were required to preferred, even at the time, preferred to have cart service as opposed to bin service because carts could be replaced more easily. They felt like they were more sanitary than these large bins. And so what Midstate decided to do originally was just, okay, because we'll deal with them on a case-by-case basis, but if it's a small restaurant and we want organic service, we'll just provide them we'll bill them for what we call an extra green waste cart, which was really a fee that was already established, intended for residential customers who might have big properties and have a lot of green waste. But what we found over time is that the cost of handling these, particularly restaurant-derived organic waste, it's very dense, it's dirty, it's much heavier than yard waste. You can imagine your green waste can at home, it's probably got branches and maybe some
Dry leaves.
yeah, dry leaves and maybe a little bit of grass clippings, that kind of thing. Well, if this is dense food, it's very heavy. And so we recalculated the rates. And so for commercial customers to use a cart, if they don't want to get a 1.5 or 2 yard bin service and they want to use a cart service, these are the proposed rates. And this is based on the additional weight of those and processing costs of those loads. So if it's, let's say you're a small restaurant, and this will be a lot of the folks that are most affected by this fee requirement, because unless you can prove that you don't need organics service, you need to comply and have your waste segregated into organics. And so if you're like a small restaurant, you probably don't have a green waste service today or organic service today. And you can choose either to receive bin service or cart service. You can see that the cart service is about 1/3 the cost of bin service. So if you don't generate a lot, you're probably gonna get cart service. It'll be about $63 a month on top of your refuse service, whatever you select. Any of these choices are available. And it's possible that a customer could say, okay, now that I'm getting organic service, I'm going to reduce my garbage service, and their net increase might be less than that $67 because maybe they go from garbage service 3 times a week to garbage service twice a week, and they have once a week organics service. Anyway, that's one of the new fees. And then the other new fee that's listed here again is this violation notice fee over here. So, and this again, this fee, the reason these fees didn't line up exactly with the calculations that I previously shown is this 1117 includes the IWMA sort of pass through 5.4%. So all the rates that were calculated by Midstate for their direct costs have to pay an additional 5.4% to IWMA because that cost is of net revenue or net fees collected. So that's what's before the board tonight. If the board wishes to proceed with these rate adjustments at the conclusion of a couple of things I'd recommend. One is to open up the Prop 218 public hearing and accept any protests. If as long as there are fewer protests than 50% of the property owners and or customers, and we have 2 protests that we received to date. So unless there's another 1,400 of them coming in shortly, you can consider the resolution. That resolution number 11-2022 would implement the rates as shown on these 2 pages and as shown in the Prop 218 notice, effective July 1st. I did want to point out, just in case you were concerned or in case you noticed, the resolution now that we have all of the district's rates and fees established by resolution, the exhibit to the resolution includes all the district's rates and fees, including development impact fees and water charges and all these other things that are really not at all related to refuse, but only the ones that are related to solid waste or refuse in this exhibit have changed. This way we can continue to publish a master fee schedule. So that's why it's prepared in this manner. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, and maybe we should go back to the just the main Zoom screen, and we can come back to this if there are any questions that are related to an item that's specifically shown in the presentation.
Thank you for that. Before I open it up for public hearing, I'll open it up to the board for questions. And Director Fredonish, you have your hand up?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you for the presentation. One question I have, a topic that came up during the committee meeting was, I think Mid-State Solid was going to look into possibility of seeing if they could offer a smaller garbage can. Because I know San Luis Obispo is offering that, you were going to see if it's compatible with the trucks or not, to maybe try to help the customers that don't create as much garbage, because that level has gone up quite a bit. So I was just wondering if you guys had a chance to look into that.
Ron Crawl, Mid-State Solid Waste Director. We did look into it. There are some contracts in the South County that do allow for smaller containers for the more dense populated downtown areas like SLO and the apartment complexes and the high rises and the students, residents. It's serviced by a rear load truck, which is serviced by a gentleman or two in the back of the truck that empty the container in the back. All of our services provided to Templeton are automated. We have demoed a couple smaller carts than the 32 gallon, which is quite small, and we have some damage because of the different sizes between the 32 up to the 96. The demos have been okay. We're probably still going to need some time to dig more into it. And again, I think even though it may be a smaller size, the impact of the price because of the labor and because of the the reviewing and the reporting and all the components of making sure that container contaminants aren't present in either size, it takes up the labor through. So it could be a reduction. It's certainly something we're interested in, but the first two demos didn't work very well with our automated arms that are opposite from what's done in the South County with the rear loader trucks.
I think the reason I was asking is because one of the protests that we have is an individual single person who doesn't create that much garbage. So was trying to see what are the options, for someone in her situation. And I thought either having a smaller garbage, but I don't think another option, I guess, would have been maybe trying to do it every other week, but I don't know if that would be possible.
Possibly. The challenge with that on organics is because it's just purely odor issues.
Yeah.
And other containers that get contaminated with flies and bugs and maggots and what have you. The reason we went to the cart approach for the commercial 65 gallon with the staff's approval was because it allowed for potentially greater service levels per week to get rid of it more often. So it wasn't sitting out for 4 or 5 days because the generation wasn't that high. Even though the price is inclusive of all 3 containers for residential service, a customer doesn't have to put out the green waste container because they don't generate any.
Yeah.
But now with 1383, they cannot legally put in organic waste into the black container, even if it's a small component. The goal for 1383 is to try to get as much participation at the residential level, which has really kind of been absent from a lot of regulations that have come from CalRecycle over the course of the last 25, 30 years.
Well, I would appreciate it, the fact that you continue to look into trying to find a smaller or another solution. So thank you.
Director Giardini, do you have any questions?
Sorry. No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question regarding some of the admin costs. For notices of non-compliance, the dollar amount, I don't recall, the dollar amount that's being charged to accommodate any kind of notices, is that being spread across the entire population, or is that an administrative cost that is charged to that violator?
Well, only to the customer who receives the notice.
Okay.
So that
okay.
$11 and 16, yes, that cost, we talked about that at the committee level, is we know it's going to be borne, right? There are going to be we have to, that's a requirement of 1383 is to notice customers as to why their can wasn't collected or if there was a violation. We're requiring the driver to provide that notice. So there's 2 options here. One is to bill the customer who receives a notice. The other option is to spread the cost to all the customers. And we chose the former, and we reviewed this with the committee in terms of how those costs are carried out. Now, we do think that there's going to be a period of time of education where Midstate likely will not want to impose those charges on their customers during this education phase. Let's take the next, like say, this year and really next year is education years. And Midstate isn't obligated to bill that as long as it doesn't impact the rest of the customers. So I think they'll probably, I'll continue to work with Midstate and say for a period of time, you want to consider those warnings and not bill them, that's fine, that's up to you. It's lost revenue, but Midstate has a history of wanting to work with those customers and not impose charges if they can get the customer to comply, whether it's 1383 or something else.
I appreciate that. I want to make sure that for somebody who is the violator, that the cost of sending out that notice is not spread
It's not.
across all individuals.
The goal there is with the new ordinance that Templeton passed, 2021-011 or 03, I think it's the number from last year, but 2021-6. It is a requirement and we have to have some kind of teeth, I think, in order for us to look at it. Self-monitoring is the next year and a half.
Yeah.
Kelly Cycle takes over the monitoring process in 2024. I don't anticipate any activity with that type of a warning or fine for that entire first and 2 years. There's no reason for it. We're just educating folks. But we thought it would be important to have it in here as we went through this process for the 1383 adjustments.
Okay. Any other questions from board members before I open it up for Prop 218 hearing officially?
None for me.
So with that, I know we don't have any members of the public on the call. And I've been informed that we actually have our member of the public, who I thought was a member of the public, is actually representing Midstate. But as General Manager Brils had indicated, we did receive 2 emails from individuals, and I like to read them into the record. The first email that was received by our General Manager comes from Kelly Roberts, who is here in Templeton. And that individual is opposed to the rate increase. He states, as a single person renting in Templeton, I already pay extremely high disproportionate rates for water and sewage utilities relative to my actual usage. The proposed rate increase would disproportionately impact me. I currently pay the smallest trash and recycling plan available, yet rarely fill half of my bin. I'm already paying nearly $300 to $400 per month in utilities in order to rent in this town with no family and with extremely minimal utility usage. If the rates for refuge collection increase, I will be further disproportionately impacted. As a single professional who rents in Templeton, I'm voicing my objection to the proposed rate increase. So that comes from Kelly Roberts, and I appreciate Director Fardanish raising or asking the question about could the bins be smaller in size, because I think that would address what this individual is indicating. The second notice of objection comes from Greg O'Sullivan, and I'll read into the record what he has written. He states he was unable to be here in person this evening. I write in protest to the proposed increased rates for refuge collection resolution 11-2022. As I communicated to the board in June of 2021, I felt combining or using excess, in quotes, solid waste franchise fees was not consistent with the rules and laws and current TCSD ordinance 2001-1, which states in part, all franchise fees collected by the district, unauthorized franchise fees for the collection or disposal of garbage or refuge matter within the district boundaries shall be deposited into restricted accounts, with such funds only being used for the purpose of reasonably related to providing for the collection or disposal of garbage or refuge material and solid waste enforcement consistent with LAPCO resolution number 2000-8 within the district boundaries. He goes on to say the current board then adopted ordinance 2021-4 to merge the solid waste fund with the park and refuge fund. The staff reported for ordinance 2021-4 stated that, quote, "The board was interested in using franchise fees revenue that was used in excess of current solid waste expenses and activities to assist with the ongoing park and recreations deficit." He further states resolution 11-2022 indicates that the rising rates in part is due to, quote, "The fees imposed on haulers by San Luis Obispo Integrated Waste Management Authority, IWMA, has raised the hauler fee from 2% or 30 cents a month for residential accounts under $50 to 5.4% across the board effective July 1, 2022. This increases the monthly rate for services by $1.63 for a 32-gallon residential customer to $2.42 for a 65-gallon residential customer, and by $1.95 for a 95-gallon residential customer. It also raises the cost of service for commercial customers by $4.82 to $41.23 a month, depending on the size and frequency of the bins of service. I'm not sure if the $4.18 is correct, because that's a huge jump.
That's not, that's the range of cost increase, depending on whether you're on like a 1.5 yard service once a week to a 6 yard service 5 times a
Okay,
week.
okay. He further states that based on the staff report, the proposed rate increase will generate approximately an additional $12,000 in franchise fees to the district. As mentioned in my letter dated June of 2021, protesting using the franchise fees for anything other than what it was intended. He quotes, "The community pays a portion of their bills from mid-states to the franchise fund. In most residential bills, that amount to approximately $6 a month. By adopting this ordinance 2021-4 to transfer solid waste franchise fees to park and recreation without any outreach or education to the public is at the very least a violation of public trust. Simply saying it was done in an advertised public meeting is disingenuous at best." Goes on to say, at the very least, the board should apply the $12,000 increase in franchise fees to offset the cost increases of the IWMA fees and implementation of Senate Bill 1383, as both would have been appropriate use of the fees under the original ordinance 2001-1. As I have been unable to participate in the board meeting this evening, I respectfully ask that this communication be summarized by the board as part of the public record. Respectfully submitted, Greg O'Sullivan. So that is two of the public comments that have been provided on this particular item. So with that, seeing that there's no further members of the public and no further communications from the public, I'm going to close the public hearing at this point in time and have the board consider the rate adjustment for resolution number 11-2022. Any additional comments that any board members would like to make at this time? Okay, seeing none. You know, I understand the increase is unfortunate, and it seems to be kind of, it's anyone is being hit from all sides at this point in time with the economy the way it is. But certainly, you know, I think that what is being proposed here seems like it is fair. Unfortunately, we have SB 1383, which is requiring some operational changes which come at a cost. And I think Midstate has done an excellent job in breaking down what those costs are. And I don't see how that would be avoided. In addition to that, we have the IWMA, Integrated Waste Management, which those fees, we do not, as an agency, have any say-so. Those costs are given to us and have to be absorbed by us as well. And the only way that we can stay afloat, if you will, is to pass along those costs to our consumers, our customers. So if there aren't any other comments or questions at this time, I would like to make a motion that the board approve resolution number 11-2022, which is adjusting the mid-state solid waste and recycling refuge rates, changes to the Templeton Community Service District customers. Okay, so motions made by Director Logan and seconded by Director Fardanish. Can we have a roll call, please?
Directors Logan,
Aye.
Bardanish,
Aye.
English. Director English is absent. Director Giardini,
Yes, I hear you. Unfortunately,
and Director Peterson.
Yes.
Okay, that motion passes 4-0 and one director being absent. And with that, thank you very much for attending this evening's meeting and for also providing some detailed rate adjustments information. I think that data was most helpful. With that, we'll move to our second item, which is a public hearing for resolution number 12-2022. And this is the adoption of the 2022-2023 fiscal year budget and appropriation limits. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our general manager to walk us through what that budget is being proposed.
Thank you very much. Yes, so this isn't, you first saw this budget about 2.5 weeks ago, and then the board held a workshop on June 7th, and we went through each department's line item revenue forecast and expenditure forecast. Since that date, we've added some additional items to the budget. With the board packet last week, you received the departmental summaries, as well as we found 2 errors on a couple. I'm sorry, there's one other thing that changed. Actually most of the line item pages changed because the board took action subsequent to the workshop and approved a budget amendment to pay down the PERS unfunded accrued liability, which affected a number of the funds out of the current year's budget, made a budget adjustment. So we, in addition to the departmental summaries, issued new line item pages reflecting that change. There was also a change in the wastewater fund for a project to replace a segment of sewer line that the board approved at your last meeting. So that item changed as well. Then over the weekend, we discovered there were a couple of errors on budget sheets. So pages 9 and 14 were issued to you yesterday and corrected those errors. Those were also published online on our website under the items provided to the board after the packet went out. So that those have been made available to the public. One was just a pure mathematical error. The other one, we picked up the wrong beginning balance on the fire fund as if the UAL payment hadn't been made, but it had, and so we've corrected that on the summary fund balance pages. Then tonight, just an hour or so ago, we provided the board a couple of additional items. We provided the board the budget transmittal letter, as well as the proposed wage schedule. So what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, tonight is just highlight a couple of items that are stated in the transmittal letter. Since you went through the whole budget as a whole, in some detail a few weeks ago, I thought I'd just point out a couple of additional items. So on the budget transmittal letter, this is really providing an overview of the budget document. There's a couple of charts that kind of explain the situation. Nothing really new there. I did want to point out a couple of things that are in the transmittal letter on page 4 of the budget. One, I make note that a cost of living adjustment of 5.61% is recommended to take effect on July 1st, 2022 for all full-time positions and part-time positions tied to full-time wages. The proposed cost of living adjustment was determined using the consumer price index calculation since December 2020 and then subtracting the COLAs or cost of living adjustments that were previously provided or approved by the board in July of 2021 and again in January 2022. Additionally, 5 classifications are proposed to receive equity adjustments. The classifications of finance officer and recreation coordinator are recommended to receive a 5% equity adjustment, and the classifications customer service representative, maintenance worker, and utility worker are recommended to receive a 2.5% equity adjustment. These adjustments will further the goal of having all of the district's classifications within 5% of the labor market as determined by the 2020 compensation study. The wage schedule shown on pages 12 and 13 include these proposed COLA as well as the equity adjustments. So those wage schedules are what I referenced, those were passed out just this evening, and they include the COLA as well as the equity adjustments for those 5 classifications. Additionally, I do want to point out a couple of things that are I think unique or change with the budget. The most significant of these is the way we're dealing with retiree health insurance. We went over this a couple weeks ago, but I think it's worth pointing out again for the public. Not that we have any here tonight, but so at the bottom of page 5, I know that there are one of the changes is for 2022-23 retiree health insurance premiums are budgeted in the PERS health insurance retiree line item in the administration fund, and this budget recommends the district retiree health insurance trust fund will cover the current year expenditures. So we would make a withdrawal out of that account to cover the current year's expenditures. This is a departure from the previous approach where the costs were funded, budgeted and funded out of the fund that the retirees worked in as employees, with the cost being paid using current resources. In other words, it's sort of pay as you go approach. So now that we've fully funded OPEB and have built the trust up, costs are all being borne out of the administration fund, and the budget anticipates that we'll be withdrawing those costs out of the trust beginning this next year. So that's a pretty significant departure for that one particular line item. There's a couple of other fairly minor changes to the budget that you can read about if you'd like, and we did discuss them at your workshop. I do want to just point out in conclusion, there's a couple of items that I think are worthy of noting. One, we are in a high inflationary condition that was not anticipated. Certainly 2 years, certainly the beginning of COVID or leading up to that, when the economy was sort of kind of moving along predictably and strong and well. COVID hit, we didn't know what the impacts were going to be. Originally, there was a lot of concern about impacts to local government, property taxes falling, and those kind of things that didn't materialize. And in fact, just the opposite really has, and we're now, so about a year after COVID first hit, we began seeing a period of high inflation. It started, I believe, in February of 2021 is when the sort of higher than traditional inflation hit. And that has continued and really worsened over the past 15 or so months. So we're currently dealing with, that does pose some financial risks to the district, both for the next fiscal year and then certainly beyond. In the near term, while we've accounted for rising fuel prices, budget amendments will be likely in several funds if gas and diesel remain over $6. When we put our estimates together, they had gone up, but they weren't as high as they are now. And so just warning you of that. But maybe more importantly, long term, many of the district's expenses will rise from supplies to energy and likely faster than our revenues will. Additionally, while the district has been able to raise wages over the past couple of years to account for the increased cost of living, continued high inflation will make it difficult for future COLAs to keep up with the rising CPI, as revenues are not expected to keep pace. You know, some of your revenues are property taxes, for example. We know that's a lagging revenue source. Certainly property taxes for existing homes where people don't move or sell are capped at an increase of 2% a year by Prop 13. And the rate adjustments that the boards previously examined are already factored in through this year. So now this is the 5th and final year for the water rate adjustment 2022. So you might have to look at that again. For our tax funded services, a sustained period of high inflation could impact the services that we offer. Again, those are property tax dependent services like parks maintenance and fire services. For enterprise funded services, a review of rates will be needed sooner than otherwise might have been needed. Rates ultimately going up higher than would have otherwise been expected. Again, if this high inflation continues. We don't yet know how long this pattern will continue. The longer it goes, the worse it will be for us and for our customers for TCSD items. Finally, I just want to conclude by saying, while it's my responsibility to present this information to you, it's a team effort. All of the department managers have had a significant role in determining the recommended expenditures and line items and projects. But really, it's Natalie Clock who puts this document together. And without her, we wouldn't have it here tonight. We wouldn't have it here tonight because she was here doing it. That is the summary of the budget. I also wanted to just point out just really quickly that I provided just tonight, and we actually updated this on the online as well. We did not have a resolution with the packet originally, but we've handed one out tonight, resolution 12-202-2022. We'll do a number of things, and because you haven't had a chance to really look at this before, I'll just go over it really quickly. There's a number of facts that are listed under the whereases. It talks about it's your responsibility to, the district's required to designate a custodian for its money. That you're required to adopt an appropriation limit, the gain limit, that is a component of the budget. The district desires to make planned activities known for the next fiscal year. There's a public hearing that was noticed for tonight. It hasn't yet been held, and they're lining up already, so I don't want to go too long. But this, when you pass this resolution, it'll acknowledge that the board of directors has certain responsibilities for establishing wage and benefit levels. That no district employees are members of recognized employee organizations under the Myers-Millis-Brown Act. The board of directors is prepared to adopt a revised wage schedule for district employees, provide a cost of living adjustment, as well as equity adjustments for 5 classifications based on the 2020 compensation study. This resolution, if passed, will do 5 things. This budget with the pages that we've added tonight would be adopted. The budget can be administered by current policies and practices that can be amended from time to time by the board. That the appropriation limits, which is contained within the budget on page 17, is adopted, and that the wage and salary schedule, as shown on pages 12 and 13, are adopted effective July 1st. And that additionally, the salary and wage table provided as an exhibit in the resolution, that's these several pages that follow the resolution as exhibit number 1, would also be adopted effective July 1st. That is how the COLA is implemented through that table. And then those numbers make their way onto the wage schedule. So again, my apologies, but this was not, we were unable to provide this information to you in advance or with the board packet for a number of reasons, but it is available to you tonight and has been made available to the public online.
Okay, thank you for that.
I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, so seeing that we have no members of the public on the Zoom call or in the room, I'll open it up to the board members with any questions that you may have. Director Giardini, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, well then let me ask any comments from members of the board? Okay, go ahead, Director Fardanish.
Oh, yes, yeah, I was gonna go ahead and make a comment. Thank you, Natalie, for doing this. Thank you, Chair Manager. Overall, I mean, the budget, it looks great, and I'm glad where we are right now. But as we all know, the future is definitely going to be challenging. It's going to be uncertain. We don't know where we're going to be next year. So one of the challenges and the difficulties that, I mean, at least I'm struggling with was the, for the salaries, the CPI. I mean, the CPI is extremely high, and this is something that's, we cannot sustain. So if it continues, that is something that we have to be aware of and make sure that, I guess, everyone understands that we appreciate our staff, what they're doing, but at the same time, we have to look at our overall budget. And if this situation continues, it definitely is something that we all have to be aware of, that it's not sustainable, and we need to take a look at it closely next time.
Thank you for those comments. I would just like to say thank you, Natalie, for putting this packet together. I know that it's a lot of work involved, and certainly it's very comprehensive. And I know you had help with other department heads, but certainly someone has to take the lead. So thank you very much. I also want to kind of echo Director Fardanish's comments as well. 5%, 5.61% in cost of living adjustment. That COLA adjustment is not sustainable. I agree. And I appreciate the general manager, your summary and conclusions, because I think that I speak for all board members, as well as Director Fardanish's comments, and kind of echoing those, that that's quite an increase. And unfortunately, it's not just salaries that are increasing, it's all of our other operational costs that inflation is having an impact on. And unfortunately, that doesn't have the same impact on our revenue streams. And so it's really difficult, but we also understand that we need to make the adjustment now. But that's not to say that we can make any guarantees in the future. And I think it's important for staff to understand that. And I think if the general manager can also convey that to staff, the board is concerned about, this is a one-time cost of living adjustment with no guarantees that it can continue, even though inflation may continue. I don't know that the district can sustain that because our revenue stream is not keeping pace with that. So that is a concern. But I think it's important that we try and maintain it. We have the ability to do it now, but it's not to say that we'll have the ability in the future to do it. So I just want to make those comments. But thank you again, Natalie, for taking the lead on this. I know now you're going to be working on the audit. Any other comments that any director would like to make at this time? Director Peterson?
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I agree with Director Ardenish and Director Logan. This was a hard decision to make, but we felt it was in the best interest of staff to do it. And it definitely is unsustainable. And if things continue like they are, it's definitely won't be able to do this again next year. And hopefully things will change. But again, it was a very tough decision, and I'm not going to reiterate again what they all said, but it's something that, we need to get the word out that this can't continue like it is. So anyway, and thank you, Natalie. Just get your foot fixed so you can be here for the budget. Anyway, thank you.
And I just want to say thank you to Natalie also, and ditto on all the other directors' comments regarding the sustainability of these increases as far as wages go and COLA.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, we now have a motion to make.
I could make the motion.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution number 12-2022, adopting the 2022/23 fiscal year budget, establishing the district's appropriation limit, and approving the wage schedule.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made by Director Fardanish to approve the 22-23 operating budget and appropriation limits and wage schedule, seconded by Director Peterson. May we have a roll call, please?
Directors Fardanish,
Aye.
Peterson,
Yes.
English. Director English is absent. Director Giardini
Yes.
and Logan.
Aye. Okay, that motion passes 4-0 with one director being absent. Thank you again for that. And we'll move now to our general manager's report.
Yeah, I do have a short number of items. First, you might have noticed some work going on in the Vineyard and Bennett area. We're doing a manhole rehabilitation project on Bennett Way. That was a project that was budgeted in the current fiscal year. We have a contractor doing that work now. It's supposed to conclude by the next few days. So you might have seen some traffic impacts and anyway, this is a relining a number of manholes in that vicinity. The Concerts in the Park program is underway, started last week. We had a good turnout, beautiful weather. And so tomorrow night's our next concert. I was supposed to remind myself as to who it was, but I cannot recall. It'll be a good time no matter what, and we expect good weather tomorrow night, and probably a little bit bigger crowd as folks get back into the swing of things. The 4th of July festivities in Templeton appear or look like they're gonna be traditional and strong. The parade will start at 10 a.m. on Monday the 4th. The pancake breakfast from the Templeton Firefighter Association from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Right here. Advanced tickets are available at the district office or at the fire station. I don't know if they're selling them online like they did the last couple of years or not. I haven't heard. And then my understanding is, although I don't have a lot of details, that there will be the activities at the park after the parade, as Templeton has previously had. You know, the organizers of that part of the event have changed over time. And with the Templeton Chamber merging with the Paso Chamber, I'm not actually entirely sure who's organizing it, but I've heard that the band has been secured and there will be vendors out there. So I think it'll be a terrific and festive Independence Day. And then it's also a holiday, as you know, for TCSD. So our offices will be closed on Monday, July 4th. Those are the items that I have.
Okay. Questions for the general manager? Okay, then in your packet, there's also the facilities committee meeting notes. Any questions or comments from directors on the meeting notes for the facilities committee?
None.
Okay, thank you. Activity reports, there's a finance report from Natalie Clock. There's the fire and emergency services report from Chief Peterson, and park and recreation and solid waste from Melissa. That's also in the packet, as well as utilities. Any comments from directors? Yes, Director Fardanish.
I have a question regarding, I guess for Natalie, regarding the past due accounts and the amount of 9,700. It seems like has it changed much or?
No, it hasn't changed much. We've had 2 accounts that have been shut off for quite an amount of time, so those kind of go up. But for the most part, we haven't, it doesn't change much more above or below that 9,000 to 10,000 mark.
Okay, so so are people paying, I guess they have monthly?
Yeah, so they're, so paying, I mean, we have a number of people that are on payment plans as
payment
well.
plans, okay.
Some of that is like inactive accounts as well that we're still trying to collect on.
Okay.
So
And then-
We're back to kind of a routine. You know, remember during COVID, we couldn't do shut-offs and all that. We're back to a routine and we're getting our customers, they basically they can fall behind as much as 60 days, but after that, they get on the shut-off notice.
So these accounts aren't older than 60 days?
No,
They're all okay. All right, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions regarding the activity update reports?
None.
Okay, director reports and or comments on any meetings attended on behalf of the district? Yes.
I just,
Peterson.
Yeah, I had the opportunity last Wednesday to go on a ride around with the fire department. And I must say it was very interesting and informative. And I would recommend anybody on the board to do that. It was a hot day and it started out, seeing how they check everything. It amazes me how they go around and check everything on the engines, make sure everything's working. We went out to the training area and I watched them do a training session on how they would get somebody out of the car and they use their tools to cut the car and all of that. And again, it was really hot out there. It was very interesting. And then they took me over to where the day before they had a fire over at
Foxtail.
Foxtail, yeah. And while we're out there, they got a call for fire. And so I got to ride along on that. It was out on Highway 46 East. And that was really interesting. We were the second engine on the scene. It was a brush fire that had started and moved into the house. And anyway, it was just gave me a whole different perspective of the fire department. And so I would really like to thank Chief Peterson, Captain Klein. And I got a chance to talk to some of our firefighters. And I guess what really amazed me is their dedication to what they're doing. They really enjoy what they're doing. They're really good at what they're doing. And the camaraderie that I see in the fire department amongst all of the employees is really kind of fantastic. And I can see why we get these young kids in and they're really good, and then they leave for things that are better. One of the young men was married. He didn't want his wife working, so he has about 3 jobs. He's a bartender and a waiter somewhere. He works over at the Twin Cities, and he works here. And he's thinking about going to Tennessee. But anyway, they just really love what they're doing. And I'm really glad I did it. And I think it's well worth you guys' time to do that sometime. And I got lucky for me, unlucky, I guess, that I got to actually go out on a fire. So anyway.
Unlucky for them.
Yeah, unlucky. Well, you know what? They really like doing that. So, which, to me, you couldn't pay me enough money to do that. But, anyway, so if you relay my thanks to Tom and the rest of the crew, I'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you for sharing. And that kind of inspires me. I'd like to do the same. So I'll have to make a point of reaching out to Chief Peterson.
And I did it because Jeff English did it and said
it was worthwhile.
Yeah, he didn't get to go out on fire, but he said it was really worthwhile, and it really is. It really gives you a better understanding of what they go through and what they do. And
well, thank you for that. Any other director reports? Director Giardini, did you have a report that you wanted to provide?
No, I just have a comment along the same line. There was a really bad accident on on Bethel near Donaldson. I happened to be out walking my dog, and Chief Peterson, because he lives over in, not the Vineyards, Wildwood, was on the scene within moments, and then the fire department showed up. And our guys were really responsive and very professional. And so I just wanted to relay that.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, well, our next meeting apparently is going to be July 5th, which seems far off, but we have the resolution approval of the IWMA Joint Powers Agreement. We have a public hearing for the county tax roll, the placement of streetlight assessment, weed abatement fees, and delinquent water and sewer charges, Measure A, parcel tax, and CFD by resolution. So those are 2 items that we have at this point in time. There may be others, but that's all we have right now is tentative agenda items.
Just want to comment on the first one, on the IWA item. I wanted to invite, IWA has just hired a new executive director, and I don't believe he's even started yet. So I'm gonna wait to confirm, because I'd like to be able to have that person in attendance. So in attendance when you consider the JPA agreement. Once that person's started, I'll confirm if you can make it the 5th. If not, it might slide, because I think it'd be important
That's fine.
to have that individual hear your comments, because I know that it's an opportunity to have somebody hear something firsthand.
Okay, thank you for that. Without any further business, we'll adjourn our meeting at 8:08. Thank you, Director Giardini. Have a good evening.